Welcome. I'm Stephen Garvey with National Citizens Alliance. I'd like to welcome Suzanne, who's an ambassador at the Chilcotin Nation, which is at the 50th parallel, 53rd and a half parallel in the interior of British Columbia, and they're up the coast, and is it parallel to Savannah?
It,
Suzanne?
going north and north to south, it's from McBride down to Savanaw, just before Kamloops.
Okay, wonderful. I think everyone knows about these mass graves, unknown graves that are coming up. And Suzanne, before we start, I think we should have a moment of silence. This is a great injustice, tragedy on epic proportions. I think many Canadians they don't know what to think, and it's a horrific part of our past. So let's have a minute of silence for all these innocent people that have lost their lives. And right now it's about 1,000. It could be up to 10,000. But even if it's just one, that alone. But let's have a moment of silence. Thank you, everyone. We're going to go through the history of the Chilcotin, some of the main historical points. Suzanne's going to share her perspective. She's an ambassador for the Chilcotin Nation, and we got Philip here, who has a lot of experience with Canadian natives through working on their lands. So he's going to add his perspective. I've been on their lands as well. We obviously have friends in those communities. So we're going to bring all our knowledge. We request people to share your comments, and then we will address them as we go through. But it's very important we understand the history. If we don't understand the past, we're being controlled. We have to understand the past in order to take ownership over the future, to control the future. And I'm going to explain later on some quotes that pertain to this, Susan, but this is critical pertaining to this issue. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what happened in 1864. And this is a tragedy people know. And this is only one native nation that we're looking at right now. But six of their chiefs were slaughtered by hanging. And this was in 1864 in Cornell, British Columbia. Here's a photo of it, and this is one of the largest mass hangings in Canadian history. They had been ambushed at what they were told was a peace conference, and they would meet the newly installed governor, Frederick Seymour, and discuss terms. And at the hanging, apparently mostly indigenous crowd of 250 represented seemed to have been from the north, the south, and some from the Chilcotin. Walked 100 kilometers in honor of the chiefs. And there was here, according to this quote, there was no Aboriginal consent to the occupation of the indigenous lands in British Columbia. The statutes were passed by the colonial legislature of BC that permitted I can't believe this, Suzanne, that permitted non-Aboriginal people to legally register land in their own names if they occupied our Aboriginal land for a certain period of time and made small improvements, such as building a house or clearing a bush. That's what was going on back then. And there's a look at BC, and there's the nation there. And they're calling this a true story of Canada's war of extermination on the Pacific and mass depopulation by a series of catastrophic smallpox epidemics. I'm going to get into that. And the native people suffered a sudden catastrophic decline. And here's one of the Chilcotin chiefs. Klats 1864. So this is pretty horrific, Suzanne, what happened then.
It
And
is.
they were completely set up. I can't believe what happened with the land. It reminds me of what's going on in Israel today with these Israelis coming into East Jerusalem and just saying, "These are our houses. Get out." And I'm not, we're not against Israel, but there is a parallel there. You can't deny it. They were going into Aboriginal land and just claiming it and having legal right to that land. It's unbelievable.
Thank you, Stephen, for having me today, and my condolences to all the Native nations who are going through such horrific pain at this time. We grieve with them, and our prayers are with them. So what has happened was it's like you say, it was an atrocity from the get-go. When the people came to this land, the Native people welcomed them in, ironically, and they're still talking about that to this day, where that's something that they deeply regret, unfortunately. But at the same time, they did welcome the settlers in, and the so-called governments of Canada at that time, and along with the church and the Masons, decided that instead of working peacefully with the natives, sharing the land like the natives thought was going to happen, they were just going to get rid of the natives and take it over. So it's even more horrific than just allowing the settlers to take over the land that didn't belong to them. And but it also came to the point where there was a mass extermination of the Chilcotin people, and there were hundreds and thousands of natives that were killed at that time. They were told that the blankets that were being brought to them were gifts, and to this day, it is tradition in this nation to bring blankets as a gift for the leadership. And so the natives accepted this kind gift, they thought, and it was just it basically almost eradicated the entire nation, to the point where there was hundreds and thousands of Chilcotin people, and now there's just a few thousand, maybe 7,000 members in the nation. So it was a mass depopulation expedition that was sanctioned by the church, the Catholic Church, and of course brought over through the Masons, who then continued to just destroy the people. And the chiefs at that point in time, when they saw that they are deliberately bringing a plague into their communities to murder them, decided to take action and to stop this mass murder. And so it was when the government of British Columbia and Governor Seymour and all those people who were involved at that time again lied to the people and said, well, we're going to call it a truce. We're going to come to the table and we're going to stop, what we're doing against you. And then you don't have to worry any further. And so that's when all the people gathered together, and then they were tricked again and decided to hang those chiefs, which of course, I believe in 2019, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau had exonerated those chiefs. That's why he exonerated them, because really what they were doing is they were protecting their people. They were trying to stop this contagion from destroying everybody. And so if that sounds familiar today, then so let it be. But that is something that is very typical from the get-go by Canada and former British Columbia at the time, is deception. That's unfortunately how these people operate and have started. That's how Canada was founded, is trying to destroy the Native people, not working with them, just like the Native people were originally wanting to do, is to welcome people onto their land, and they still do. I'm working for the Chilcotin National Congress, and the reason why I started working for them is because I thought their inclusion of all races and all nationalities and their goodwill towards all races was very pertinent to me. And so I really appreciated that. And so that's why in 2015 I started working for them. And so the way I started working for them was based on my background as an early childhood educator, and working with the Native people for many, many years and with their children. Basically, I started realizing that there was still some Native children who were being abused, and to this day, through the Ministry of Children and Family Development, and I did not know it at the time. I thought the child I was advocating for was an isolated incident. Unfortunately, not the case. And the more I started to learn about what's really going on against Native people, the more horrific the story got. And so in 2015, basically what we did was the Chilcotin National Congress, on the heels of this 2014 Supreme Court of Canada decision, which recognized the title for the Chilcotin Nation for a narrow strip of land. They decided that based on that recognition, they were going to create a constitution, and based on the recognition of by Canada that the Chilcotin people have the right to abrogate provincial law and replace it with Chilcotin law, they created the Universal Supreme Court of the Chilcotin, or Universal Supreme Court for short. And so I was assisting them with that, helping to create new laws and statutes for the nation. And some of those laws, the Constitution, can be found at our website. We can give that later on, I suppose. And So um, it- basically, what my role was to work against or overturn the corruptions of Canada that have been going on for the last 150 years against the nation, against all the Native people. And so the court was created with, as the first international Aboriginal court. So technically speaking, it's the highest court in North America. And so many people don't know about it. And I had a question earlier about how come nobody knows about the Chilcotin state, because in 2016, Grand Chief Stanley Stump Sr. declared the statehood of the territory, and so it's really technically the fourth country of North America. Nobody knows about it though, because it's deliberately so suppressed and so covered up. Um, it's a very sore spot to the NWO, because the Constitution, as it is written for the Chilcotin Nation, the Constitution of the Chilcotin Nation, declares that the Native people are the host nations and Canada and the United States are the guest nations. And so again, we have the Native people welcoming in to their territory others from around the world wanting to live peacefully with them. But the other party, unfortunately, is not so amicable. And so the government of Canada, which, you know, I think I'm being very gracious to call them the terrorist government of Canada, because that's indeed what they stoop to. And then they pretend that, you know, they're very, very kind and generous people. However, behind the scenes, they were very fierce and treacherous.
Exactly.
So,
Could I go into the
yes,
documents?
yes.
And then we're going to go into your article. So this article here, I'm getting an echo. Am I on speaker, Philip, or Suzanne? Philip,
I've got mine off, or
hold on a
I'm on
second.
mute, I believe.
I think it's okay now, but I just want to confirm what you were saying, Suzanne, and we totally share your sentiments here. And this is Suzanne. I came across this article on smallpox. And you won't be surprised, but what you were claiming is being denied by the government of Canada in the mainstream. But here, this is the International Journal of Infectious Diseases. Smallpox, a disease and a weapon. And it talks about it being used right here, smallpox as a bioweapon. And then it talks about, quote, smallpox was also used as a biological weapon during the French and Indian Wars, 1754, 1767, by Commander Fort Pitt. Soldiers distributed blankets that had been used by smallpox patients with the intent of initiating an outbreak among American Indians. An epidemic occurred, killing more than 50% of the infected tribes. That's one source I wanted to share. And I have another source to back this up, because this government is so treacherous and deceitful. Suzanne, and the Canadian natives know better more than anyone else.
Correct.
They know more, and we know at NCA, because we're outspoken critics of this crooked establishment in Canada, so we're on the receiving end as well. But I have one other article, Suzanne, that will back up your claim here. I'm just going to switch it over. This is another article I came across. I just want to share that.
It's great research, Stephen.
Well, no, it's okay. It's
yeah, no, it's true.
this is a really good article. It backs up your claim, Suzanne. So this is interesting here. It's talking about the smallpox blankets and how Jeremy Amherst's name became tarnished by stories of smallpox infected blankets used as germ warfare against American Indians. Again, referring to that article. And there's some people that have created doubt. They have an interest, Suzanne, in discrediting this. They don't want to be linked to biowarfare, right?
Right. And
So, but Lord Jeff's letters refers to it. There's actually a letter. These images of microfilm original letters written between General Amherst and his officers and his command during the summer of 1763, when the British were fighting what became known as the Pontiac Rebellion. And he talked about it. But
yeah,
I find, and this is really pertinent to what's going on. Suzanne, please share your commentary.
yeah, yes,
Right here. Lord Jeffrey Amherst, the British commander-in-chief for America, believed that the best way to control Indians was through a system of strict regulations and punishment. And this reminds me, I'm just going to add an insert there, and Suzanne, that reminds me of the residential schools, doesn't it?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed. Canada has not changed. The purported peaceful nation that it tries to portray in the rest of the world is not true. What has happened from the beginning with the bioterrorism against the Chilcotin people is continuing to happen today now against pretty much everybody. And so you know, the smallpox incident is well documented. It is in court records. People can find that in Dr. Dan Gottsman's affidavit in Chilcotin, Tusi Indian Band versus West Fraser Limited, 1994 decision in the BC Supreme Court. So this is not people who say that it did not happen. I mean, it's in books all over the place. People that I work for, Chilcotin National Congress members, Grand Chief Stanley Stump Sr.'s wife, Fanny Stump, her grandfather was in the picture that you had shown of the chief earlier.
Wow.
So these are hereditary people who know their history. And so it was actually her direct lineage of the chiefs that were hung, which of course Prime Minister Justin Trudeau totally ignored her lineage to the people he was exonerating, and he was in the public's eye hugging people who were not even associated with the people who were hung. Those people who had ancestry of the people that were hung, he totally ignored. So people don't even know that. This is all a facade. It's all pretentious. The Prime Minister has gone out of his way to attack the Chilcotin National Congress and the Chilcotin state. They continually run a smear campaign against the hereditary people here in order to suppress the truth. So they do not want the systems out there do not want people to know the truth, because the truth will set them free, of course. The Universal Supreme Court has, for example, the ability to overturn C-10. For example, if the Parliament of Canada decided that they were going to make crappy laws, if people would have torn to the Universal Supreme Court has the authority, and the Chilcotin National Congress has authority to overturn those. And so people need to know that they don't have to be the victims of these terrorist regimes. There is, you know, uh, a court that now will stand behind and uphold the basic human rights of everybody, not just the Native people. It was created for everybody, all races, all nationalities, everybody in what we consider North America, or elsewhere, wherever Aboriginal people dwell. People can attorn to a new system of court, and that's the Universal Supreme Court. And so we don't have to be the victims anymore of these people who continually commit genocide, not only against the Native people, but now across the board. We just need to get the information out. We need to be able to empower people with that information, that they can they have relief from terrorist regimes who continually try to rob them of their rights, continually try to harm and injure their citizens.
Yeah, excellent point. And I want to get back to this article. Just there's one point here, Philip and Suzanne and Jesse. Welcome. Thank you for joining, Jesse.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Sorry I'm late.
Yeah.
Nice to see you,
I just
Jesse.
want to. I thought this was very pertinent. It says here, quote, that the best way to control the Indians was through a system of strict regulations and punishment when necessary, not bribery, Suzanne. But now, if you look
Yeah.
at what they're doing, it's a mix of the two, isn't it? A lot of
It most
bribery,
certainly is.
a
Lots
lot
of
of bribery at the top levels.
Yes, and
They
it's
kind of
surprising.
reverted their game now.
Yes, in the Chilcotin, um, the Canadian government has set up uh, an opposition to the true hereditary government of the Chilcotin National Congress. And so these 6 elected chiefs who comprise of the opposition, they have been bribed by Christy Clark. And also they have taken millions and millions of dollars for this bribe. So they've committed these crimes. Also with respect to other nations, such as the Kamloops Nation. There are people there who have taken bribes to try and cover up the crimes that are going on there. So it's pervasive in pretty much all nations, and so that is a corruption that needs to be corrected as well. Native people need to stop taking bribes from Canada and selling their sovereignty away and selling their people downstream. So
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to go into your article now so we can touch on some of these core points. And Philip and Jesse, you can obviously add your input. But we should be very clear, Suzanne.
yes,
Even though the residential schools, they were largely Catholic. I don't know if they were um, other forms of Christianity, like Anglican. But
yes,
we know, yeah,
Yes, I believe there were. Yes.
yeah, yes, they were. But remember, the government of Canada at the time, the provincial governments were overarching this, were giving the thumbs up, weren't they, Suzanne?
yes, yeah, absolutely. The
And I
RCMP.
want to be fair here. The Liberal Party of Canada, the Conservative Party of Canada, were putting the thumbs up on this as well, weren't they?
Absolutely. To this
Those
day,
and I made a declaration, and I was on this conservative channel Saturday. I think the guy maybe he misswallowed when I said it, but I said those parties are fundamentally genocidal.
absolutely. These people are
So
involved in
how do
terror.
we move forward? You know, my question to all Canadians: how do we move forward when they're still governing?
Yes,
Yes.
that's the
I
ultimate
don't see a
question.
difference. We have the same tyrants governing this country.
It's Team
Yeah.
A
It's
or Team B.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. The same tyrants, they're still doing the same things in different forms.
And that's
Yes.
because, people do not know that they have an alternative to turn to. They don't have to, keep the charade up that these people are there to help them. They're nobody's friend. They are there to uphold the genocidal agenda worldwide, and so people need to stop aiding and abetting the crimes that these people are committing. So those existing system doesn't work today. It didn't work yesterday. It's not going to work tomorrow. We need a true form of government by the people, for the people,
Of the people.
of the people. So
Yeah, and I just want to add something here that NCA is advocating, Susan, and we want to know if we have your support on this. We want genocidal trials,
oh,
independent. It'd be great to do it through the Universal Supreme Court in
That's why-
Chilcotin Nations. Let's have genocidal trials on these organizations.
I think we need
I want justice. I think all
investigation.
Canadians want justice.
We need really a proper investigation of all of the school sites.
Yes.
It's horrific to think that there's children out there that are unknown. We've put high priority in identifying our soldiers. There's children out there that are lost. There's families that are missing a great aunt, a grandmother, a sister, father, uncle, whoever that may have been, and they may not even know what happened to them. If there was no record system and no even a basic plaque or monument to know that these persons are there, it's horrific to think that a government that wants to stand up for any type of justice wouldn't make it a stand to just make that basic move. I think as a party, we would stand to fully support an investigation, and where there was any wrongdoing, I think definitely there should be. I totally agree, Stephen.
We already know that.
100%.
We want genocidal trials. We
Yes.
want independent genocidal trials. These organizations need to be held accountable.
Yes, and that's what.
Yes.
Sorry.
That's all we want.
And
they
we should
not get off the hook.
How there could be an investigation. How did these children
What
pass?
investigation by the government? They'll
No. I
whitewash
believe
it.
there should be some independence. But we should know, how did
who's
these
gonna
children
run it?
pass? Why were they
natives
not
are-
informed? Why were there no
The
recognition
natives
of
are
their
doing the
graves?
best research.
Absolutely. I agree. There's about 3 discoveries already, and what's this, about 2 weeks? So why has it been so long?
Yep, and that's what the Universal Supreme Court is all about, and that's why it was created, just for this very purpose. And we do not acknowledge statute of limitations. So anybody that was murdered, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, there should be justice done, and whatever form that needs to happen. The Universal Supreme Court is up and ready to receive whatever complaints, whatever criminal charges and indictments are brought before it. The Universal Supreme Court is teaming up with other native courts to strengthen our ties with respect to moving forward with bringing perpetrators of these crimes to justice.
Yeah, fair enough. Before I get into your article, it's going to touch on a lot of this. I want to share a couple of quotes here from Orwell, and I think they're very pertinent. Suzanne? George Orwell, 1984, if anyone hasn't read that book, fantastic book on the future. But one of them, I feel this is pertinent, Suzanne. The quote is, "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past."
Yes.
right? And we've seen a lot of that. But what's happening now? And I'm going to put this in other words. Who controls the present controls the past and future. And the beauty of what's going on now, Suzanne, is that we're taking over the narrative of this corrupt government in Ottawa
Yes,
and these corrupt provincial governments. They're on damage control. They don't know what to do it, right?
I agree. I totally
So,
agree.
Yes.
but this is so important. Why we need to understand the history. If we lose that,
Absolutely.
and that was one of the key tactics against Canadian natives, was to take their history away. And this comes
Yes.
into another quote by Orwell, Suzanne. Quote, then the most effective way to destroy people is to deny and obliterate their own understanding of their history.
Yes.
Point blank.
Mind control.
This
Exactly.
is what they're doing across. It's not only natives now; they're doing this to traditional Canadians as well, the settlers, I guess,
Yes.
if you will. They're actually
Definitely.
going after them now.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. The
And there's
conceptual book
another
burning.
pertinent
Yes.
thing here, Suzanne. Another quote from Orwell that I think is important. Quote: "Double think means power of holding two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both of them." I'll give you an example. War is peace, right? You could argue the government Canada is hope. The government Canada is justice, right? That's double think, right?
Yeah. And totally.
Yes.
Right? Freedom and slavery, right?
Yeah.
Double think. You could go on. Injections are good for your health. Or what you know what I mean? The double think, right? Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Lockdown is good for you, right? The
Yeah.
double think, right? You see, Orwell is so pertinent to what's going on, isn't he?
Very. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I know I was a little bit late here, but have we talked about it all, about why this is all happening and coming to light now? Because someone pointed out to me and said that they're all coming out now because they're hiding other things right now. So that's why they're making a big issue of making it public now while they slide other things through the government.
Yes, like the blackface scandal.
Yeah.
What do you think,
Interesting
Suzanne?
idea.
So it's a distraction to push other things through.
Because they've known about this for a long time. So why now? Why is this coming up at the time right now? Is this because, they actually want to make this right? Or is this because, it's come to light for everybody because now they're, actually doing something, more, that they need this to take away from whatever they're doing?
Well, I heard that it was an accident. It was an insider that slipped this, and so that's how it came out. They want to portray that they're in ultimate control. They are not. They're winging it just like any other criminal does, and so yeah. So I think it came out because, as a Christian, I believe it was God's timing. And there's a Bible verse in Matthew chapter 10 that says everything covered will be revealed. There will be nothing hid that will not be made known. So that's a Bible promise. It doesn't matter how many years go by, the cover-ups will come to light. Perpetrators of crimes will not succeed in covering up their crimes forever. There's no such thing as a perfect crime. These people have committed crimes and they need to be held accountable. The organization needs to be held accountable. The government who aided and abetted these organizations in their criminal activity and in their murder and genocide.
Genocidal. Yeah, genocidal.
Yes.
Genocidal. They need to be held accountable. So who's going to hold them accountable? But except now the highest court of the land. And, so just imagine if there was a school somewhere and your children were going to this school and 60% of them were murdered. I mean, that's just
it's unbelievable,
mind-boggling. And that's the kind of thing that was going on in these residential schools. 60,000 children were murdered in the last 150 years.
Suzanne, can you put it into perspective for us and for viewers? How many children roughly would have been in these schools, and roughly how many would have suffered some of these horrific events?
Well, I have been in at the Kamloops residential school building a few years ago. I walked through the halls. I do not know the specifics per se, how many children came and went through there. I do know that the RCMP went from Alberta to northern British Columbia collecting children for this school there. And I can tell you, just even though I did not know at the time a few years ago that it was actually a burial site that I was going to on the premises, but the blood of those children are still crying out today. It's a very horrific experience walking through those halls, and I understand most of the bodies that were buried are buried underneath the band office, so they try to cover up these mass graves by building buildings on there. So that makes it even more atrocious to think that these poor families now have to think about how to access their loved ones when they were so disrespected, and
wow.
It just mind-boggling what these terrorist organizations have done over the years, and they're not good guys. They really aren't.
Yeah, very, very sad. And that shows they knew what they were doing was wrong.
Yes.
And they tried to cover it up, which is even worse. So these are mass murderers. Let's face it. These are mass murderers. And what I'm seeing is a continuum from those horrific days to what we have now. Because we got the same organizations running this country.
Yes. And
it's sickening. It's sickening.
Yeah, the RCMP and the church are trying to destroy documents as fast as they can. That needs to stop.
Yeah, and they're not disclosing. They're shredding.
Yeah. And what are the criminals doing with any? How dare they have anything to do with now the investigation process? I mean, the RCMP themselves should be charged for what they did.
They're going to cover it up.
Yeah.
They need to be dismantled. They need to be dismantled.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm just going to go through your article quick here because there's some really we can emphasize some of the points. But the Chilcotin Nation, located in the interior of British Columbia between the 50 and 31st parallel, that's an independent nation state within Canada. It's a sovereign, independent nation state. They never signed a treaty with this criminal terrorist government.
Correct.
Suzanne?
Correct. Absolutely. And
so they are absolutely independent.
Yes.
And this is where they are. There's the map. There's Vancouver Island. You get an idea where they are.
Yes. In 2016, Grand Chief Stanley Stump Sr. signed the Declaration of Independence and under the Montevideo Convention on the Rights and Duties of State, because the Chilcotin meets all four criteria underneath that convention, declared that the Chilcotin Territory an independent country. And so in 2016, that was served on the United Nations General Assembly. That was served on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, and then later on President Trump. Everyone, it was also served on various embassies. I personally had done that myself, but everyone of those people and those entities that were served remained silent, remained mute, and apparently the Vatican told all these nations just to ignore them. And so that's why the media is not allowed to, the mainstream media is not allowed to pick up the story about the independent country of the Chilcotin, because this is, a worldwide conspiracy.
Yeah, and here's this. This was in 2004. The Supreme Court of Canada acknowledged they have title to their land in a landmark decision. There was no treaty.
Correct.
And then we go through your article even further. In March, the Constitution of the Chilcotin Nation was ratified March 15, 2015 by the Chilcotin National Congress. And it created what you referred to was the International Aboriginal Court called the Universal Supreme Court of the Chilcotin.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
and this can nullify, overturn laws, bills in Canada, the U.S., wherever Native people live on this planet, and is currently the highest court in North America for Aboriginal people. Is that correct?
It's for not only Aboriginal people, but all people. So
all people.
many
Yeah.
people who are non-Aboriginal people have torn to their matters to the Universal Supreme Court for adjudication already, and so that has been occurring. That's the good news, that the court is live and well. However, even though they Canada and the United States try to ignore the court, they have to accept all orders that come out of the court until the court is challenged as invalid and
Yes.
found by another court of competent jurisdiction to be invalid. All court orders from the Universal Supreme Court have to, under Canadian law and US law, be upheld. So that's the good news. The sooner people will attorn their matters to the Universal Supreme Court and obtain the judgments that is very necessary to correct the corruptions going on in the world today, the sooner that will be cemented and will have to be upheld by every other court. Otherwise, their courts will be defunct as well, because if they can't keep their own rules and laws, then I guess they're obsolete. So
Yeah. Well, that's incredible. Like, most Canadians don't even know that this is happening. The fact that they didn't sign a treaty, the Supreme Court of Canada agreed that it's their land.
yes.
And they had this court, and they're doing good things for their people.
Yes, and I just want to
go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to clarify. Like, many people, when they want to belittle what's happening here, they'll say, well, the Supreme Court of Canada only recognized a narrow strip of land as being, having title, Chilcotin title, and however, if one reads that very lengthy decision, the Supreme Court of Canada acknowledged the only thing at issue before them at that time was that narrow strip of land. And in their decision, they made sure to mention and that there is room that this narrow strip of land isn't all that is at it belongs to the title lands. So when we go back to other decisions, like I mentioned earlier, the Tusi Indian Band versus West Fraser Limited, in that decision, there were maps that, and there was that Dr. Dan Gottsman's affidavit, that the researcher who did a fabulous job on researching the history of the Chilcotin sovereignty all the way back to the 1800s, prior to British Columbia joining Confederation. So in that affidavit, there's multiple facts in there showing that that even Governor Seymour, there's a excerpt in there in his affidavit from Governor Seymour, who in the 1800s recognized the extent of the boundaries of the nation, ranging from watershed on the west coast to the watershed, 100 miles east of the Fraser. So we have, and then he mentions the north and south boundaries, which is virtually about the same as the boundaries we described earlier. So this was acknowledged back in the 1800s. Before British Columbia was able to join Confederation, they had to acknowledge the sovereignty and the independence of this unceded territory. So that's all well documented in his affidavit. We have, court records showing, title to all this land. And I think that's where the Supreme Court of Canada based their decision on. However, they specifically pointed out, we are only dealing with a narrow strip of land, but yeah, that could, and they left it open, that could be much broader than that. And sure enough, it is broader. Because it was recognized from back in the 1800s. We have a chain of evidence from prior to Canada being Canada that this land was sovereign and never ceded to Canada. Technically speaking, the Chilcotin has never been part of Canada, and this is another deception by Canada to the rest of the world, saying that this is our territory, which includes the Chilcotin estate, and it does not. It never did and never will.
Okay, interesting. So you're doing a lot of good things. You're talking about the logging and sawmill companies.
Yes, and that's the unfortunate thing about what has happened so far is because we have been slandered in the media, the Chilcotin National Congress, and what we're doing, and Canada has deceived the people on our territory with the statements that the Chilcotin National Congress needs to be ignored. Just don't listen to their laws. I mean, could you imagine? This is not reconciliation by any shape or form. We are being illegally invaded. We're being illegally occupied, and they're illegally taking our national revenue. Even though profuse amounts of correspondence went from our former Chilcotin Attorney General to the Prime Minister's office, to the Premier's office, to various departments of their government, trying to correspond, demanding that our children be allowed to come home. The 300 Chilcotin children who've been illegally and unlawfully apprehended by British Columbia, we're ordered home. And so Canada, again, violated, international law, and continues to violate international law by illegally invading and stealing our children, just for money, because they're trafficking these children. Victoria gets $250,000 per child per year that they keep for nonsense reasons. Because as an early childhood educator, I interviewed about 100 families and found it was absolutely nonsense and ridiculous reasons why these children were apprehended. The Ministry of Children and Family Development actually goes around, follows Native people and Native families, trying to see if they could catch them in something that they could pin on them to steal their children. So it's just horrific situation.
Wow.
But this is a big moneymaker for the provinces in garnering funds out of the Native allotted funds in Ottawa that was set in place in 1763. So this is one way to be able to access those funds to the provinces. by stealing Native children. So not only did they steal Native children during the residential school era, they're still doing that today. Nothing's changed.
Yeah, that's unbelievable.
Wow.
So, Suzanne, I had the conversation prior to us going on over the phone, but you mentioned about Indian and that a lot of natives would like to be called Indian, but because the name's been tarnished because of the Indian Act, can you touch on that?
Yes. So some nations prefer to be called First Nations.
Yeah.
Others prefer to be called Indian due to what they were duped into thinking they were going to get something good out of the Indian Act. However, pretty much everybody realizes that that was another deception, because as I had once pointed out to in a meeting that we had with one of the nations, there's one word in the entire document that overturns every good thing in it, and that's the word paramountcy. So they wrote that word in there, kind of snuck it in there to trick the Native people again, that they're getting their rights upheld. But really what they're doing is signing over their rights to be controlled by these terrorist governments. So the Indian Act is not good for them. No.
Yeah. Okay, that clarifies that. I want to clarify too. You mentioned that you were appointed Chief Justice of the Chilcotin Nation, but you mentioned that the establishment authorities are denying you that role. Could you elaborate on that?
Yes,
I don't understand that.
I'm being personally attacked and prevented and prohibited from doing my job. I was appointed in 2015, right on the day that the Constitution was ratified. I was given my appointment, and my first appointment was to order the Chilcotin Nation's children home. So I did that, and but with respect to my work, I have been, in essence, kidnapped by Canada. I'm being currently held a political prisoner and a hostage, and so I'm fighting that. But
how are they doing that specifically?
How so? Yeah.
How so, Susan?
Basically, I have diplomatic and I had judicial immunities, and they had said that I could not hold myself out to be a judicial official. So I do not hold myself out to be a judicial currently. However, I'm fighting their unlawful and illegal kidnapping of me and illegally charging me, which is a violation of the Vienna Convention on the Rights in on Diplomatic Relations, as well as many other international laws. So Canada is personally attacking me for my work for the nation.
But we got to be clear, it's not the people of Canada. It's these establishment authorities, right?
Correct.
Yes.
They don't represent the people of Canada, right?
They do not.
Democracy is a facade right now. Democracy is a facade.
Exactly.
Okay, multi-controlled. It's controlled by the media, right? Let's face it, right?
Exactly. And what is happening?
I think a lot of Canadians support Chilcotin and what you're saying, but obviously the authorities view Chilcotin Nation and yourself as a supreme threat.
Very much so, and we are pretty much, a real threat to their corrupt system, because we are here to overturn their corruption and to bring perpetrators of crimes to justice. That's what the Universal Supreme Court was created to do, and so what these nations have done in signing up to the United Nations. If people look into that, when a country signs up with the United Nations, they're signing all their sovereignty rights over to whoever's controlling the United Nations. So we have one entity at the top of the food chain who's actually controlling all these countries, when they sign onto the United Nations, they give up their rights to make decisions that are good for the people. They, in that declaration that they sign, they agree to going to war with whichever country they are told to go to war with. And that's not something that we will ever do. The Chilcotin National Congress, specifically, the members specifically do not want to have anything to do with joining the United Nations under those terms. That is nothing more than usurping the sovereignty of one country over another, and that's not something we're about. We're about freedom, justice, and true sovereignty.
Yeah, I should clarify that there's certain countries that did not give up their sovereignty when they joined the UN. These are the veto countries: China, the US,
Yes.
France, the UK, and Russia. They didn't. The fact that they have a veto, they can overturn anything the UN does. So those are the countries controlling, right?
Yes.
Suzanne?
I would agree with that. However,
because they have veto, right? Veto power.
Yes, but at the same time, if they have been infiltrated, which a lot of these countries have been, it's
by this globalist NWO,
international
right?
banking and
Yeah,
yes,
the central banks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is really fascinating. It's great stuff. Philip, do you have any comments?
I think this has been a great listen. I've learned a lot just right here in this session. I really appreciate this, Suzanne. This is great. I think as far as what we just have to return to the fact that we do have to review our history. We have to know that not everything is sunshine and rainbows. Sometimes there is horrific facts that need to be known, need to be remembered and reviewed. And in that light, that you can look back and say, that's horrible. I would never want to do that again or see that happen again. And if we forget these atrocities and we put them away and hide them, it allows for them to be repeated. And that's something that I know I learned, and I was brought up in a family. All of my grandfather's generation and that they were all veterans, and the biggest thing I remember was remember the past or you'd be doomed to repeat it. And I think we need to have reflection on this topic, and I think this is something that really should be covered in more detail. I think this is fantastic.
Yeah, but remember Orwell.
Yeah.
They were trying to obliterate the past of the natives through those residential schools. That was the cultural genocide, Suzanne.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But now we're learning there was a physical genocide as well. There was a bioweapons and mass extermination. I read a statistic that through the smallpox, 90% of the Chilcotin were wiped out.
Correct.
90%.
Yes.
Jesse, do you have any comments for Suzanne?
Yeah, well, I was just going to mention that something, and then my phone overheated and turned off, and it's never happened like that. And so I stuck it into the fridge for a little bit, so just to cool it down. But I wanted to mention that I really think that all of this, this genocide and everything that has happened is from, the Queen, the monarchy, and the Vatican, and they need to be kicked out of Canada because they did this. And and if they get reprimanded, kicked out of Canada, and they lose their rights to Canada and everything because of this horrific this is something Canadians can stand behind, because this is actual tangible, something tangible where there actually can be something like good happen out of all of these horrible things that they have done to, the natives and to the rest of us.
Well, something has to
Yes.
happen, but don't forget the establishment political elements as well. The Liberal Party of Canada, the Conservative Party of Canada, that were orchestrating all this, Jesse.
Yeah, they're the
Yes.
ones who they're both sides, the left side and the right side of the
Yeah.
Queen and Army.
There you go.
They
There you go.
control both sides, right? So the whole system has got to be replaced, because right now we don't really have a constitution. We don't have any
Yeah.
freedoms, and these
Yeah.
people are allowed to do whatever they want to us,
Yeah.
because they know that what are we going to do about it? And now is the time for us to actually do something and show them that we have the power. We, the people, are the ones who are truly in control.
Yeah, we have to be careful with censoring churches and religious organizations too quickly, though. I think is some ways there some instances, Jesse, we were mentioning what is the motivation and why now. There is a move against churches in Canada as far as targeting for censorship and targeting for closure, because they're not abiding by certain orders that have been issued nationwide. There can be some parallel that by raising public animosity, you can basically point the eye of blame towards a singular party or a group that doesn't necessarily apply to those who are actually at fault. And,
Exactly.
So there are political officials, there are members of the United, Anglican, Catholic, and multiple other churches, religious groups, charitable organizations that did have persons, obviously, that joined their numbers and unfortunately saw an opportunity to operate as a predator or harmful individual to some of our most vulnerable persons, and those are children.
Mass murderer. They were mass murderers.
The common link is the Vatican. And, with these churches that are loyal to the Vatican, that are paying money to the Vatican, these is what we need to expose. It has nothing to do about censoring anybody, but if the Vatican and the monarchy have a direct link to what happened to these native children, then it needs to be addressed. It needs to be stopped. They need to be kicked out of Canada. It has nothing to do with religious freedoms. It has to do with this, sick psychopaths that they fed on, the human suffering. They fed on the natives. They fed on the people. And until they are stopped and kicked out, then they're just going to have free reign through the Liberal and the Conservative Party, one side or the other. It does their bidding, and nothing ever changes until we change it.
Yeah, because it hasn't changed. There's a continuum of this abuse, ever since the 1800s, 1700s, going back all the way to the present. And look where we are today. Everyone is under assault now.
Yes.
Yes.
Right? So, and I talked to Suzanne, and we came to an understanding. And Jesse and I have this understanding, and I have the understanding with Philip. This affects all common people, regardless of your race, your background, where you're from. We're all in this together. We know who the enemies are.
Yes.
I don't want to simplify it, Jesse, but you know what I'm saying.
Totally.
Yes.
And that, it's great pleasure to have Suzanne on today, because we're in solidarity with this. I'm absolutely horrified the more I hear about this. And you know what's even more sickening to me is that the same lineage of these organizations, people, are governing us.
Yes.
It's sickening. And then the fake media is kind of whitewashing it, eh?
Well, it's their arm, like the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Royal. meaning the Queen's police, the Queen's
Yes.
army. They were the ones who were taking the kids. So, you know, that's got to be addressed. And now the media is just, you know, doing what the agenda of these people, they own those corporations. So whatever comes through them, it's to protect them. It's not to protect people. What we hear through the mainstream media is about protecting the corporations. It's about protecting the Queen. It has nothing to do about getting proper information to, you know, Canadians.
And
Yes.
that's
Yes.
another thing too. The Universal Supreme Court had, on its own motion, prohibited forced vaccinations of any kind. So people who are worried about that today, that these terrorist organizations
Injections. Yeah.
will
Go ahead. Start.
harm them, can stand on the court orders of the Universal Supreme Court declared December 15th, 2020, that no forced injections can ever be mandated on anybody. So I would strongly suggest that we unite on the authority of the Chilcotin Nation and the state of the Chilcotin, the country of the Chilcotin, and the authority of the Universal Supreme Court to protect everybody's rights, to not be murdered by these people who have been doing nothing but who have been doing these mass genocidal murders repeatedly through generations.
Yeah,
Wow.
excellent. I'm just wondering, what's the cost involved to file a motion with the Universal Supreme Court? Because that can be a barrier to entry for some people. Suzanne?
I believe it's $50 if my recollection, $50 or $100.
Wow.
So what if we wanted
awesome.
to file
Wow.
something against these organizations? Like Jesse
Yes.
said, like could we do that? How much are we
Absolutely.
looking at? You're saying $50 to $100 to get it going?
Yes.
Really?
And that's to file the documents, and then the court will then take jurisdiction of the matter, and we expedite our orders, or they do. And so their court orders are not appealable, so they cannot be appealed away, and so therefore they stand as a final order.
Wow.
So yes.
Okay.
And our documents for the Universal Supreme Court Act and the Constitution of the Chilcotin Nation can be found on that site that you're showing right now on that article.
You may have a lot of calls tomorrow, Susan. Or Suzanne, sorry.
Yeah, there's the email address.
I'd love it.
Yeah.
There's the Chilcotin Nation Congress 4 at gmail.com is the email address. Emailing the court at that. I'm going to talk to you, Suzanne, following this live in the coming weeks to see what we can do. Maybe we can join up to
Wonderful.
initiate some action. We need a court that we have confidence in. Philip?
Yes.
I would agree.
I don't have confidence in the judicial system. It's run by these very people that are behind all these atrocities. So how can you have confidence in it?
It's hard to have faith in anything passed right now. It's difficult. There's issued orders by decree on the news. That's how we receive orders and edicts now.
Yep.
I remember watching the documentaries on North Korea, and they had a loudspeaker at the end of the street, and that's how the orders would come. And it seems to be very similar. And the controlled censorship of information.
Yes.
I think we're under a greater, more powerful regime, really, than those who are suffering under North Korea. However, they do have obviously horrific hardship there. The mind control and the level of indoctrination that we have all been subjected to honestly, it's incredible. This presentation should be shattering the glass for so many people. I'm taken back a little bit myself. I didn't realize some of the history of the events.
Just on that topic, Suzanne, one of their core tactics is divide and conquer through division.
Correct.
Can you talk about that from the standpoint of Canadian natives? Like, how have they tried to divide them from nation to nation within the nations even? How? Like, do they through the words or through actions as well, right?
Through actions as well, because the best way to destroy a family unit is to steal children from the family. That is one of the most traumatic experiences, especially for young parents that you could possibly think of. And so, they feel they have no recourse. They have no one to turn to. And so then, of course, then the depression and all of that comes in. So basically, they try to break apart families. They actually attacked us as leadership, trying to jail me and my colleagues for trying to do what's right and trying to act in our appointed capacities. So we did nothing more than any other judge would do. However, they're claiming on in the media that was something that it was not. So they're trying to divide and conquer us as leadership. All of my colleagues at some point in time have been falsely accused and falsely arrested and falsely incarcerated. Some are still incarcerated. So they are attacking us through the media, through misinformation, by slandering us in the public media. So they have done everything they could to attack us on every level.
Yeah, and we feel the same. We've been under attack as well by the same, I would argue, these criminals, these people, the mass murder. But I'm looking here at this comment, Suzanne. This is interesting. They said they used the bogs to hide bodies in Ireland. You know those bogs?
Yes.
They would actually put them in there, and but I just want to touch on one thing here. This Globalism NWO is about the Great Reset, the so-called Fourth Industrial Revolution. They're pushing this AI technocracy now.
Yes.
Are you familiar with all that?
Yes, and so
so how's that impacting natives? Can you talk about that, because we're seeing it in the other Canadian society more and more. We're seeing more censorship. We're seeing more surveillance on even facial recognition. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police were already admitted to using facial recognition. So can you comment on how that's another existential threat to the natives, isn't it?
Well, for example, in my situation, I know I'm being illegally wiretapped. There are laws in the Criminal Code of Canada with respect to how someone could or law enforcement can go about wiretapping. There's a legal process for that. It's very stringent. But I know that I'm being illegally wiretapped, possibly all the time. It just seems like they're constantly violating the criminal code, and they are basically attacking the leadership. Those people who can, in their minds, make a difference in overturning their corruption. They are systematically trying to take out.
And look what they did.
They've been
1864. They hung 6 chiefs.
See, they've been
Well, it's
stealing
the
and
same.
murdering kids for so long. The least of their, things is that they're wiretapping. What they're doing is so horrific that they don't care about breaking the law, breaking the Constitution, and we see that over and over and over.
Yes.
And that's where we have to get, law and order. And I'm not sure if we touched on this at all, Suzanne, but how were the natives like before, the people came here from Europe? Like, were the natives different tribes? Were they kind of in unison with the land, or were they at war with each other? Like, how was it before, the Europeans, actually settlers, came?
Well, my experience in traveling through the various nations is great unity. There is a great camaraderie between the nations, and so I can attest to that. There is definitely alliances being made between strengthening the various nations. And like Stephen had said, that we need to take action, and everybody agrees it is now a call to action that we are all standing up and participating in. So we are, the various nations, various tribunals, courts are forming alliances, and we are definitely wanting to stop, to remove, to have these terrorist regimes, out of power. We want them out of power. We want them stopped. For example, when I was working in my capacity, in my former capacity, I had ordered Canada off of our territory. I ordered the RCMP, the BC Judiciary, and the Ministry of Children and Family Development and various other government entities off of our land. So that still they have not complied with. So they're in contempt of our court orders. So and instead of complying, they are attacking me personally and my colleagues.
So they're basically occupying your land, would you say, and beyond
Yes.
that? They're
Yes,
also harming children now.
absolutely.
The British Columbia government is abducting them, and
They're
maybe for
drugging and
adoption
caging.
or whatever.
They're drugging and caging children. For example, the 12-year-old that I started to advocate for back in 2014, she eventually was, it came out in the trial that the social worker was illegally drugging the child with illegal drugs. And of course, she was being caged. She was at arm's length at all times from her foster parent, because she kept on running away to my home. So basically, the government wouldn't allow her to come to my home, even though that very same social worker had registered her into my program years prior. But then because she felt that she was safe in my home and in my daycares, that they would for whatever reason disallowed that. And so I got to know, not only was this child drugged and caged, but the Grand Chief said that his great grandchildren would be brought to the parents when they were babies, limp, as if they were drugged. And so, even the Grand Chief's Stanley Stump Sr.'s family, the Stump family, had been severely attacked. His daughter had fought for her children. And so these people know no shame. They will, especially attack the leadership, especially here, because of our upholding true freedom for everybody. So we are under severe attack.
And that's consistent with history.
Yes.
They hung 6 chiefs in 1864.
Yes.
And they're still going attacking you.
Yes. That has not stopped. And you know, if they could, and I know there have been several attempts at our lives at various points by Canada.
Not the people, by the
Not the people.
establishment cabal.
No, the common people have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Even here, they don't know.
Yeah, the common people. It's important to make that separation.
Yes.
So when you're saying Canada, you're saying representatives of the government of Canada,
Yes.
which is now being, they've hijacked it, and it's no longer of the people. It's, of the monarchy or whoever is controlling, the actual governments.
Correct.
We would contend it's the central banking cartel, Suzanne.
Well, it's corporate aristocracy.
Yeah, is probably at the forefront of that. But there's a lot of layers of organizations and the World Economic Forum, on and on. You mentioned the UN, and there's all kinds of individuals, globalist corporations as well. Philip?
Well, I mean, there's major families. They're essentially oligarchs in Canada.
Yes.
You can look for major shipping oil monarchs, essentially out of the Maritimes. Certain families there. The major contracts in their military are awarded to those shipping yards. They're transferred from other shipping yards in under Mark Norman's whistleblowing, which resulted in the end of his career. We saw shipping being adjusted and shifted to family members of our finance minister. The McCain family and the Irving family received contracts for major ships that are now being built, and I think the first one just launched the other day. Two more yet to come. The amount of money that was just made there, just a few billion. So little details that are just ignored or essentially covered up or suppressed into the intricacies of how these deals are made, the blatant corruption that actually exists behind closed doors, where regular citizens are not given any of the opportunities that essentially our elites are given just by the tap of a shoulder or telephone call for pure connection. And I understand this has existed for generations. There has been monarchies, there's been aristocracies in the past. But once power is consolidated into a much smaller group and it's authoritarian and total, the suffering of the people at the bottom end is huge, and eventually it results in revolution. So we're going down a dark path, and I believe it is intentional. Policies would not be so foolish, and policymakers would not be so foolish in what they're writing and passing if they didn't have the pure intent to destroy what really was the fabric of a great nation prior, that did have a dark history as well. And I think it's something that we can review our past, and I think we can move ahead and try to be a stronger nation, knowing where we were and what we want to be as a democratic society that cooperates together. And it doesn't matter what your background is. I think we can work together for a proper future, that all citizens should have access to water, all citizens should have access to hydro. I mean, even Omar Gaddafi, who was destroyed by the United Nations, advocated for the housing of all of his people. What prime minister here is actually doing that? What politician is actually doing that? There's such a divide. It's appalling. And I think the public have finally woken up in a large degree that, things are not right. We've been lied to on so many levels. It's hard to build back trust. And I think the only way to do that in any other situation that I've seen in the past, if there's a corporation where the management is just found to be totally corrupt, the only way for that corporation to exist is to replace everyone at the top. And I think perhaps that's really what needs to happen here.
But it has to
And-
happen.
And
Yes.
I don't know how that can happen in the current scenario that's being set up, where basically by holding a rally you could be arrested. It's an Orwellian time.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
But remember, it's a dark past, but dark present,
Yes.
right? So that means a dark future as well. We don't want to be negative, but people are going to have to stand up. But I want to tell you how serious this is. And we haven't talked about this. And it's covered up in the media, but we're going to be doing an update on 5G on Wednesday, Suzanne. And I'm going to send you a personal invitation because I think the Chilcotin nations need to know what's coming through 5G and this AI. But I'm going to be talking about, and I'll be referring to a Government of Canada document on biodigital convergence. Biodigital convergence. And this isn't some made up conspiracy. This is right from the Government of Canada. And this is
Yes.
about putting AI into your brains. And you'll have an AI consciousness controlling you and manipulating you. This isn't made up. This is where all this 5G AI is going. So I want to put that out there. I will produce the document on Wednesday. And that's only one of the stuff I'm going to produce. But that's very scary, Suzanne, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just horrific.
That's what's coming.
It needs to stop. At what point in time, we've already lost so much ground in coming together in unity and saying no to these genocidal maniacs. We need to do it last minute before all is lost. Already they have potentially injured and so many people with
treatments.
Yes, with these treatments, or not even treatments. These genetic editing tools. They're really not even treatments. They're just there to change who we are, and so I have a scientific background, and so I have a 200-page affidavit with respect to how these that and 5G is injuring many people, and it just has to stop. There is no ands, ifs, or buts about it. They need to stop.
Yeah. So I'll invite you on this Wednesday, but I want to get to this comment from this guy, and it pertains to what I was saying. He says, "quote Evil is done in the name of democracy and goodwill. Nonprofit organizations are fake philanthropists." But my point in that Government of Canada document on this biodigital convergence, where they're going to have an AI consciousness embedded in your mind, where they're going to you're going to be walking around and it's going to be telling you what to do.
Yeah. Well, previously,
the Government
Stephen,
of Canada, get this. The Government of Canada says that's democratic. That's going to improve our democracy.
Well, Stephen, previously that was done.
Suzanne, it says there that's one of their.
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to democratize things.
But Stephen, at 6 o'clock
This is
news
Orwell.
covered that.
Double talk.
The 8 o'clock news covered that in the past because everyone watched cable news. Now there's so many media sources, they have to narrow down the pipeline of what you can read and what you can see, because the control is being lost, and that's why there is an awakening of the people. Previously, you were very much asleep in the 1980s. You were very much asleep in the 1990s. I think we can all agree, looking back on some of the news stories from those times, you think, really? Is that how stories were carried? But it's now an awakening time. It could be just like they talked about a renaissance or other times in the past where people are expanding their minds. Our government is trying to suppress that expansion.
But we all need to admit, Philip, we all need to admit that they are fundamentally genocidal.
Well, when you try to culturally and socially genocide a population, done in the past, unfortunately, to your people, Suzanne, and currently to all of our people, in a way, in a social sense, we are all suffering, and it is a targeted attack. And you could call it genocidal. You could call it, in a way, you can restrict and control a population by inhibiting their resources, inhibiting their potential, and that it can be generational, and it's a harm that it's unforgivable. And
yeah, Jesse, do you have any closing comments?
I just wanted to mention that, when we're talking about the entire system, and, it's also, we're run under maritime law. Have we talked about that at all?
We haven't gone into it. Yeah, I've read stuff on that, Jesse, but go ahead.
So, when we talk about, and, it's good we have this, Supreme Court, but the Universal Supreme Court, because all of the justices, all of the judges, they're all paid and they're run under this maritime law. So there isn't any justice trying to do it through any of the judiciary, because we're not under common law, we're under a maritime law. And that's what they've purposely done, that in order for them to stay in control of the people, because people don't really understand the difference between the maritime law. So now people are starting to wake up to that fact, and so that's the whole entire system has to be taken down, whether it's the political system, the judicial system, the criminal system. Everything has got to be revamped, because right now it's run under these psychopaths to allow them free reign to do whatever they want, to steal children, to, do whatever they want to the environment, and we need to protect it. So, we really need to come together, and, thank you, Suzanne, for coming here and, sharing your truth with us, because we really need to come together more than ever now to stop this before it's too late.
yes,
And it's actually easier than a person thinks, because our system is there as an alternative. All we have to do is just ignore their system. We don't even have to deal with any. We don't have to have anything to do with their system. Just to turn to a system that's trying to uphold your human rights and your sovereignty rights and your freedom, your rights to freedom and justice, and that process will then eventually, grow to the point that the other system will be obsolete at some point in time, when people just stop feeding the beast.
Yeah, excellent point. I think we'll close it on that point, Susan. I'm going to formally invite you to our 5G presentation on Wednesday. And, hopefully you can learn from us and we learn from you, and we can pass on that knowledge to everyone around us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're going to do a comprehensive update. Thank you for all the comments tonight.
You for coming.
This dialogue has not, even though it's ending now, it's only beginning. Action is only beginning. Remember that, everyone. And we all have power. Let's rise above the divisions.
Yes.
These calculated, these sinister divisions. And let's come together as common people across this country. And I want to wish everyone a great few days. We'll be back on live Wednesday, and this is all connected. So please tune in then. We look forward to hearing from you then.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks, Stephen, for all you do, man. You make this
Thank
happen.
You very much.
So we really appreciate
Well, we have
you.
to, man. It's good for my soul, right? We got to stand up, Jesse. Yourself, you've been at this for 30 years, so working together, we're stronger. Working with Suzanne, see the power of working together. And Philip, right? The power's
United
here.
for one.
And the people commenting, there's real tangible power, and we need to embrace it.
Canada could be the wealthiest nation in the world. We have almost unlimited resources. We have a massive, willing, and capable population that could be utilize to harvest, and we could also save what we'll need for future generations in a conservative fashion. I think that could be a national discussion. Policing can be a national discussion. How do we want to proceed and live and coexist? And I think people came to this nation, who were guests and welcomed, and some did abuse that privilege. And I think some now, still need to learn about that past, but we can, I think, move ahead. We think we can unite and really live well in this nation. And it doesn't have to be a level of suffering for people. You don't have to be working 60 hours a week to run continuously on the perpetual treadmill, because the system is designed to drive you down and never let you get ahead. We don't want to live like that, and we shouldn't have to. It's something that needs to be addressed, and I think it's time that as a people we speak out and vote for change.
Well, we're only as strong as our weakest link, and we need to take care of all Canadians first. And I know there was a community called Ubuntu where they have everybody working together, and it was only 5 hours per week each person had to put in, and that was enough labor for the whole entire community to work together harmoniously.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The current system is designed to push you down. That's the reality. But great discussion. There's lots to think about. This is going to continue. We're going to continue to have these dialogues. It's important we match it with action. So we'll see everyone on Wednesday. We're going to blow it open on Wednesday with this
Sounds great.
AI stuff.